What's going on, everybody? I'm Anthony Deicicchi with On the Water Media, and today I want to talk to you about jig heads and soft plastics. Zman is one of those bait manufacturers that I've come to know really well over the last several years. They offer a tremendous variety through freshwater all the way up to saltwater, allow you to match the hatch in pretty much any situation, and they just unveiled in 2023 some new jig heads to kind of step up their game on the bigger bait profile side of things. So I want to talk to you today primarily about the DieZel Eye Jjgheads. Now, like I said, these launched in 2023, and you'll notice they have some key characteristics that really kind of set them apart as far as jig heads go and pair perfectly with their ElaZtech baits that are offered in bigger profiles. First and foremost, you got a very specific style hook keeper here. You got a dual conical barb molded into both of these jig heads, and that barb is going to grab onto the ElaZtech material so that it won't move. Basically, when you're fishing it, if you're getting bit, you get short strikes, you're not going to have to worry about that bait getting pulled down that barb because of how sticky the ElaZtech material is to sharp objects like this. It can't really pull that bait past that. So that bait keeper is going to be perfect for these ElaZtech materials. Also, you'll notice they've molded in a very distinct eye in these jig heads, and that's going to be just another little element that's going to help draw strikes from predators, keying in on the eye of the jig head. The eyes come in three different colors. You have a red eye, you have this glow eye, and you also have a chartreuse eye like you see here. So another key characteristic that differentiates the sizes and options for these DieZel Eye Jjgheads are gonna be the hook size. Now, they come in 6/0 black nickel tri-forged hooks that are super sturdy, and they also come in 8/0. With the options between 6/0 and 8/0, on the 6/0 size, you have 3/8 ounce all the way to 1 ounce. And on the bigger hook, the 8/0, they start at 3/4 ounce and they go all the way up to 3 ounce. So it allows you to kind of cover a bunch of different presentations that's gonna dictate how those baits move and at what portion of the water column that you're gonna really kind of be targeting is gonna dictate how heavy you go. When we're talking about the right baits to pair with this, these jig heads were really manufactured to pair with their bigger baits. We're talking the 7-inch DieZel minnows, the mag swims, even the ElaZtech darters are probably gonna be your narrowest profile, and they're gonna be a great fit for the heroes. So when choosing the soft bait that's going to make the best pair with your jig head, you're gonna notice that, this would be a great bait imitating bay anchovies and maybe even peanut bunker, although they have many different options for those bait profiles. But when you take a 6/0 small jig head and you hold it up here, you're gonna notice two things. These conical hook keepers that are molded into the jig head, they're gonna be almost the same width as this 4-inch DieZel minnow. So it's going to deform the head of this bait a little bit, and it's not gonna look quite right. Also, you see the hook's gonna wanna come out pretty much past this little molded in hook exit section of the bait. When you see something like this, it's probably a good idea to stop and say, wait a minute, do I have the right jig head for this? This is probably gonna be a better pair for their headlocks line of jig heads. And you'll notice the difference between this conical barb style and the headlocks has just a very smooth collar that's not going to deform the head of like a 4-inch bait. So that's the first thing, is you want to size your jig head to your swim bait accordingly. Now, picking the right size hook also plays into where the hook's going to come out of the bait. So you see here, this is one of their longer profiles. It's a pretty wide bait. This is the Heroes, and it's a great imitation for many of our game fish. We were out fishing in the spring, and the stripers were blitzing on mackerel west of the canal and the channels, and they were feeding really deep. So when that was happening, we were throwing these heavier jig heads to get the bait down and kind of slow rolling this bait and the mag swims and the big DieZel minnows really close to the bottom, getting underneath where those fish were feeding and bringing it up through feeding fish. And that was really getting some big bites for some bigger stripers that day. Then you get into the smaller baits that aren't as long. You can choose between what you're most comfortable with. So even with bigger profile baits that are gonna fit these DieZel Eye Jjgheads best, you really have a whole slew of different bait profiles. You got long and slender in the Heroes. You got a little thinner profile in the darters. The mag swims are gonna give you kind of that tail kick, that paddle tail style bait in a profile that's gonna work really great with these. And obviously the DieZel minnows in 7-inch are a great fit, as well as the 5-inch DieZel minnows for the new DieZel Eye Jjgheads. So the last one that I wanted to kind of point out is the Streaks XL. That's this bait here. And you can see there's a skirt on here, and let's talk about that for a minute. So Z-Man makes these easy skirts. Now, we're fishermen, we're tinkerers, right? We like to play with stuff, and these caught my eye. They fit on the collar of the jig head great, and what they do is add a little bulk, a little extra action to your jig head, kind of dresses it up a little bit. And earlier in the spring we were fishing mackerel, and this kind of gives it that little mackerel pattern at the top of the bait, and it's going to do a few different things. It's just going to give it a different look, and like I said, it was something that we were playing with, and it works with these jig heads. I really like kind of what it does to kind of dress up these baits, especially in the 5-inch DieZel minnows. So that was something that I experimented with. They catch fish just like the ones rigged naked do, and kind of going through how to properly rig these things, I want to show you some cool characteristics about the Z-Man material that makes these a very durable and fishy soft plastic. First and foremost, let's rig one of these up. Let's go with one of these heroes, and we'll put a big jig head on it. Now I fish these everything from shore to in the rips, and I'll get you a nice close look at how I like to rig these bigger baits on these jig heads. So the first thing you want to do is kind of look at the thickness of the back of that head. So what you want to look at is you want to look at kind of the area around the collar of the jig head, and you want to take note of what soft plastic you're going with. In this case, this is a Heroes. You want to really match it up to the face of the bait so that you get a nice smooth connection. So the first thing I do is, with that in mind, I'm going to trim off just a little bit of the face of this bait, make it nice and smooth like that. And you want to be careful not to cut back too far, because you don't want the face of the soft plastic to be larger than the jig head, or can mess with the action and the way it swims. So once you do that, you're going to put it right up against it like that, and you're going to want to take note of where you want that hook to come out. And what I like to do is just put a little dimple in the back of it like that. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see there's a little dimple there, and that's where I want the hook to come out. Another thing that you want to do with these jig heads, because some of them, the collar comes out of the lead in a certain area that has a difference in height from, you know, the bottom of the jig head and the top of the jig head. So you want to take that into consideration. So, because if you come in too high, the bait's going to be low like that. So what you really want to do, kind of match that up perfect and put your hook point right in, so the collar is going to come through the front of the bait right where you want it, and you're going to run it right to that little point that you made with the first hook prick and out. And once you get that, you can kind of leave it there. What I like to do with these is you really want to pull these over the collars rather than push, because of the way that the ElaZtech material, it's super durable. What I like to do is just take my pliers and grab the seat of the hook and pull. You want to pull it right on. Now, this kind of speaks to the durability of these baits. I don't know how many soft plastics you can actually grab with a pair of pliers and just pull on. Once you do that, it's going to get it right where it needs to be. You really give it a good tug. You're not going to tear the material at all, because of the ElaZtech material. It's 10 times tough. It holds up to that. Obviously, it holds up to bluefish. You can catch multiple bluefish on one bait. And the nice thing is once you get that bait right where you want it, you can literally pull that as long as you want, and it's not going to move. So if you're getting short strike like that, the bait's going to stay right where you need it. You get it back out there, and you're fishing again. So you're not fumbling around with your soft plastic with this ElaZtech material. That is one of my favorite characteristics of fishing these ElaZtech baits. And that's to a T how I rig my baits, and I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to use super glue. Some other characteristics of the ElaZtech material that it's always good to, you know, kind of communicate and get familiar with is they're super soft, so you don't have to impart much action when fishing these baits. They're pretty much going to move naturally through the water column. They're buoyant, so they're gonna help look more natural when they're falling, even on a jig head. Through and through, a lot of versatility through the line. So with these DieZel Eye Jjgheads, you got the longer profile covered in the Heroes. You got your paddle tail, 7-inch DieZel minnow, and that's going to pair with both of these style jig heads. You can get away with a 6/0 hook if you want to hide that hook a little better, but I actually like this fit for the 8/0 hooks. You can mix and match your weights depending on what kind of fishing situation you're in, and you have multiple different tails. You have the paddle tail and the DieZel minnows and the mag swims, which are these baits here. These are gonna mimic your bigger bait fish, your bunker in various sizes. When you get into this size, this style bait, It's really a good eel imitation. It's a good sand eel imitation. Your longer, you know, herring and stuff like that. And then you have a more slender option here in the darters. So I just kind of went through how to rig a bait with a little more thickness to it. And I want to kind of show you the same thing with these darters. Now, the first thing you'll notice, it's a really slender bait and it has these little sections with ridges in them. It's going to add action to them when you're fishing them. The thinnest bait that you would rig on the DieZel Eye Jjgheads, and you want to do the same thing. You want to kind of match it up, trim off that front. I can get by with my pliers for this one. Cut that right off. And then the same process. You want to just figure out where you want that jig to come out. And by trimming off that little section of the nose, why I like to do that on these baits is because if you can see, that collar is going to be the exact width of the middle of this bait. And if you come a little forward here, you're going to get a little different look to where this bait connects to the jig head. So same process, you want to figure out where that hook's going to come out, give it a little poke there, and get the bait. That collar comes out right in the center. So you go down the center and you're going to bring it out right where you put that little hole. And then you push it right to the collar like so. And then just take your pliers and pull right over the collar. And that's going to give you a really nice streamlined fit on the DieZel Eye Jjghead. This one is a 1/2 ounce jig head and it's a nice slim profile to fish. You can also dress this up with the easy skirts. And overall, with this entire lineup of jig heads, it kind of covers the gamut for the 5-inch baits and larger. And putting these to the test early on in the spring with some big stripers feeding on mackerel, they pretty much were getting bit every cast. And the nice thing about it is you didn't have to mess around swapping out soft plastics as they got beat up by landing multiple fish on one bait. Overall, the DieZel Eye Jjgheads are really going to shine with the 5-inch baits and larger. Their collars are perfect for the ElaZtech material. They're going to hold those baits right where you want, and you're going to get that fish attracting big eye for them to really zero in on when they're chasing this bite down, and it's going to make the difference in getting those strikes. A great addition to the Z-Man family, made in the USA, and I've had a lot of fun fishing with these.